The lights of the Britain's Got Talent stage shimmered like a galaxy reflected in glass. Thousands of faces in the audience blurred together, clapping, whispering, waiting. Behind the thick velvet curtain, a young man named Elvis Santiago rubbed his trembling hands together, trying to calm the storm inside him. He wasn't from London or Los Angeles. He was from Davao City, Philippines, where the sound of jeepneys filled the air and the smell of roasted corn floated through the streets at dusk. He had spent years singing in small cafes, sometimes on street corners, to help his mother buy medicine. And tonight, standing backstage, all he wanted was one chance, just one, to make it worth it. Contestant 47, Elvis Santiago, a producer called, motioning him forward. He took a deep breath. "For Mama," he whispered. When he stepped into the light, the audience clapped softly, curious. The name Elvis caught a few smiles. Simon Cowell, seated in his usual spot with that half-smirk of intrigue, leaned forward. "Elvis, huh, you've got quite a name to live up to." The young man smiled nervously. "Yes, sir. My mama named me after Elvis Presley. She loved his voice. Do you think you can live up to that?" Simon asked, eyebrow arched. Elvis nodded slightly. "I'll try my best, sir." The music cued, a slow piano melody, haunting and pure. The first note left his lips like a prayer. He sang, "Can't Help Falling in Love," not as a tribute to Presley, but as a cry from his soul. His voice trembled at first, but then grew, rich, emotional, golden. Each word carried his story, every note soaked with memory. The judges leaned in. Amanda Holden's eyes softened. Alicia Dixon's lips parted, amazed. Even Simon's skeptical expression faded into something quieter. But halfway through the second verse, a high note faltered. His throat caught. He tried to recover, but his voice cracked like glass. The piano continued, but his rhythm fell apart. Panic flooded him. Simon pressed the red buzzer. The loud X echoed through the theater. Gasps filled the air. Elvis froze. His breath hitched. He blinked rapidly, as if he could stop the tears from coming. The music stopped. He lowered his microphone. The silence was deafening. Simon sighed softly. "Elvis, I'm sorry. You've got a lovely tone, but you lost control. This just isn't strong enough for this stage." The audience groaned, murmuring their disagreement. A woman shouted, "Give him another chance." But the lights stayed red. Elvis tried to smile. "Thank you, sir," he whispered. As he turned to walk off stage, Amanda stopped him. "Wait, Elvis, before you go, can I ask, what made you choose that song?" He hesitated, clutching the mic again. "It was my mama's favorite," he said, his voice cracking. She passed away 2 months ago. I sang it at her hospital bed before she went." The crowd fell silent. Simon's eyes lifted slowly from his notes. The tension in his face softened, almost imperceptibly. Elvis continued, his voice trembling. "She always said, 'One day, son, you'll sing for the world.' So I'm here, to try. Even if I fail." A long pause. Simon leaned back in his chair. "Elvis," he said quietly, "I think you should sing again." The crowd erupted into cheers. Elvis's eyes widened. "Sir." Simon nodded. "You were nervous, emotional, anyone would be. Let's pretend that first one didn't happen. Sing again, but this time, don't sing for us. Sing for her." Amanda clapped softly. "Yes, please." The lights dimmed again. The piano restarted, gentler this time. Elvis closed his eyes. His lips trembled as he whispered, "This is for you, Mama." Then he sang. The first note soared through the air, smooth and unbroken. His voice was no longer afraid, it was free. Every lyric carried grief, hope, and love in perfect balance. The crowd swayed, phones rising like tiny stars. By the final line, his voice cracked, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was pure emotion. He pressed a hand to his heart and let the last note fade into the dark. When the song ended, the theater stood still for 3 full seconds. Then came a roar of applause so loud it shook the walls. Amanda was crying. Alicia wiped her eyes. Bruno Tonioli stood up, clapping with both hands over his head. And Simon Cowell, who rarely smiled without reason, stood, too. "Elvis," he said, voice deep and sincere. "That was beautiful. That wasn't a performance. That was honesty." Elvis's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, sir." Simon continued. "You reminded me why we started this show in the first place. Not for perfection, but for moments like that. I pressed that buzzer because I thought you weren't ready. But now, I think you're exactly where you need to be." The crowd screamed again, chanting, "Golden buzzer! Golden buzzer!" Simon smiled faintly and shook his head. "Not yet," he said. "But you're going through to the next round." Elvis bowed deeply. Thank you so much." As he walked off stage, tears streaming, the audience kept clapping. Backstage, the host Aunt McPartlin hugged him. "Mate, that was incredible. You turned it around in 4 minutes flat." Elvis laughed through his tears. "I just wanted her to hear me, wherever she is." The next morning, his performance went viral. #Elvis Santiago trended across Twitter and TikTok. Clips of Simon's reaction circulated worldwide. Headlines read, "Elvis Santiago's 4-minute rejection turns to redemption. Simon Cowell's change of heart inspires millions." In Manila, his story flooded the news. A small cafe in Davao, the one where Elvis once sang for coins, played his audition on repeat. His mother's old friends gathered there, crying and smiling. "He did it," they whispered. "He really did it." Weeks later, Elvis stood again on the same stage, for the semifinals. The lights felt different now, warmer, brighter, as if they remembered him. He wore a simple black suit and held his mother's silver cross around his neck. "Welcome back, Elvis," Simon said, smiling. "How's your week been?" Elvis laughed nervously. "Surreal, sir. I can't walk 10 steps in London without someone saying, 'Sing for us, Elvis.'" The audience laughed with him. Simon nodded. "You earned it. What are you singing tonight?" "You Raise Me Up," he said softly. "Because she still does." The music began, gentle strings and soft piano. Elvis's voice rose like sunlight breaking through clouds. The first verse was tender, the chorus soaring. By the bridge, he lifted his head toward the ceiling lights, tears glinting in his eyes. The audience stood before the last note even finished. When it ended, Amanda stood clapping, crying openly. "Elvis, that was heavenly." Bruno waved his hands dramatically. "You don't sing, darling, you transcend." Simon leaned forward again, voice low. "Elvis, when I first buzzed you, I thought you'd crumble. But instead, you built yourself from that moment. I have to say, your mother would be proud." "I am proud." The crowd chanted his name, Elvis. 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 The results that night took minutes that felt like years. When the announcer finally said his name, "Elvis Santiago goes through to the finals," the stage exploded with confetti and cheers. He looked up again, smiling through tears. "Thank you, Mama," he whispered. The finals arrived under flashing lights and cameras. Elvis's life had changed, he was now a global sensation. Reporters followed him, fans from across Asia sent him letters, and offers poured in. But the fame didn't change his heart. He still called his little brother every night, still sent money to help rebuild their roof in Davao, still prayed before every performance. Before walking onto the final stage, he looked at a small photograph taped to the mirror, his mother, smiling, wearing her favorite yellow dress. "I'll sing one more time for you," he whispered. He stepped onto the stage in silence. The lights dimmed, a single spotlight following him. Simon smiled softly. "Elvis, take it away." The music began, Bridge Over Troubled Water. He sang it with everything he had. Every heartbreak, every hope, every memory poured into that song. His voice soared through the final chorus, breaking hearts and lifting spirits. When it ended, the audience was in tears. Simon pressed his lips together, his eyes glistening. For once, he didn't speak immediately. Then, slowly, he stood, and pressed the golden buzzer. The explosion of gold confetti filled the stage. Elvis fell to his knees, overwhelmed. Simon walked up to him, something rare and powerful in his voice. "Elvis Santiago," he said, placing a hand on his shoulder, "you reminded the world that rejection isn't the end. It's sometimes the beginning." Elvis hugged him, crying. "Thank you, sir, you changed my life." Simon shook his head gently. "No, Elvis, you changed mine." The audience rose again, roaring with applause. The cameras caught Simon wiping his eyes. The clip went viral within hours, touching millions around the globe. Elvis didn't win that season, another act took the trophy, but it didn't matter. He was signed to a major label, invited to perform in the Royal Variety Show, and offered a world tour. Yet, even with fame, he stayed humble. 1 year later, on Mother's Day, he returned to the Philippines. At his old cafe in Davao, he sang, "Can't Help Falling in Love," once more, no cameras, no stage, just him and the people who had always believed. A little girl approached him afterward and said shyly, "Sir, I want to sing like you. He knelt and smiled. Then sing, Anik. Don't wait for anyone's permission. Just sing. Months later, Simon Cowell was interviewed on national TV. When asked about the most emotional audition he'd ever witnessed, he didn't hesitate. Elvis Santiago, he said. He taught me that behind every trembling note is a story. And sometimes, the best voices are born from heartbreak. The clip was shared millions of times. Meanwhile, Elvis was performing in a packed arena in Manila, a sea of lights before him. As he reached the final line of his song, he raised his eyes heavenward. Thank you, Mama, he whispered again. We did it, and as the music swelled, the crowd sang with him, thousands of voices joined as one. Because sometimes, the world doesn't need perfection. It needs truth. And Elvis Santiago had given them exactly that.